Welcome on in, my Ashwings. It is time to now talk about the results of the calling at the world premiere, our very first Silver Age calling, and of course the introduction of Compendium of Wraith. So essentially, what I wanted to do is I wanted to go over a little bit of the keynotes that I've noticed over the course of these days. I'm not going to give a big rundown. I would rather you all watch the games and see how it ran out. But we'll get to who won it later. And then, of course, we'll talk about, some of the things that we were seeing in the game itself. So with this being the case, this is, of course, the world premiere in London. There is 755 people who registered for the calling, the very first Silver Age calling, which is a lot of cool prizing on the line, right? Cash prizing, so on and so forth. But 142 of those players decided to play Briar. This is almost akin to when we saw Chain at the very first Silver Age event, essentially the community-run Silver Age event that occurred in Japan, in which we had somewhere between a billion IRA, 120 IRA or something. So there's a lot of people who went into this and they said, hey, I want to play Briar. It's easily going to be the best deck in the format. Hyper aggro, really oppressive. If the hands line up, it's just the most damage you've been able to push through. And it's really something that is going to be cream of the crop, right? Well, out of those 142 Briar, only 24 made it to day two. A 17% conversion rate. Now, obviously, the conversion rates are very specific based on how many people registered the deck and how many people actually made it to day two. But that is the day two conversion, is that out of 142 Briar, only 24 Briar made it into day two. This is important because it means that, of course, you need to be a good player and also be good at playing Briar. So that is kind of this is a big example that this is not going to be just a play the most explosive deck, you're always going to win. It's you have to play the most explosive deck and also know how to navigate these matchups to really make the best out of your run. And in this scenario, that's kind of exactly what happened. We had a lot of Briar coming through. We've seen a lot of Briar games over the course of the weekend, but it was still filled with a bunch of other heroes that we were not expecting to see. I think a total of 50 different heroes were registered for the event. And there are 57 heroes that are currently legal for the format. So you're telling me that 7 heroes were skipped over. I believe it's Data Doll, some other small one, Cavdane probably not getting in there. But maybe. Actually, I feel like I saw a Cavdane. Anyway, the whole thing was super cool to see. 50 different heroes. And out of the day two conversions, folks who made it 6 and 3, right, who were 96th place and up, there were 23 different heroes in that day two conversion. That's insane. That's a lot of different heroes that you can choose from to have a good record into the event. And I do imagine that a lot of this probably was due to people dropping and getting buys and all that stuff. But I do think that, of course, there were games that led them into day two that assisted with that, and squeaked in their win for day two, which was awesome. So 96 players went into day two, 23 different heroes, huge win. One of those individuals, actually, big shout out to Florin Christian Logan, who is an absolute insane individual. Florin had went ahead and decided to register the Phi pre-constructed deck, the pre-constructed Silver Age deck that you can get for $20, and take on the challenge of, can you in fact win a calling with one of these decks? And he made it to 22nd place in day two, which is really crazy. I think his final record was 10 and 4. So 10 wins, 4 losses on a deck right out of the box. Now, that is super cool, right? Does that mean that every deck is going to be able to do that? Probably not, but we at least know that this is going to be the case for Fi. Fi is at least pretty good, but of course, Florian Christenlagen is also a really good player. Many allocades playing Flesh and Blood, so it is kind of something in which it works out. And I apologize, not like graphics up or anything of the sort, just kind of like if I suggest going to go watch the VODs, it's going to be very good. But something else I wanted to bring up is something that I thought, obviously, as you all know, I am a big fan of the Decimator Great Axe builds for Warrior and how well they do into the current meta. And I do think that showed today with personally me playing Olympia. My own Olympia statistics, because I like that hero play a bit better than Dorinthia. The highest conversion rate from day 1 into day 2 was Olympia. There were only 9 Olympia that registered in the event in total, and 4 of them made it into day 2, which means it was a 44% conversion rate for these heroes to get in. So if that goes to tell you that Olympia Decimator Great Axe tends to do pretty well, like that's the key thing there. But something else that was very prevalent in the entirety of day 2 was that 0 assassin made it to day 2, 0 mech, and 0 pirate heroes made it to day 2. So no necromancer, no Marlin, no Puffin, none of them, no Scurv. No pirates made it into day 2. And then there were only 3 ranger that made it into day 2. All 3 of them were Lexi, and they did not make top 8. So doesn't even seem like Azalea had a lot of play into this meta, which is very interesting because Azalea was a contender for to be quite a powerful deck, but I think the thing that made Azalea really good in CC was the fact that she had red in the ledger, which allowed aggro decks to essentially say, okay, I guess I'm skipping my turn. She does not have that in here. You can still send 14 dominate, but in most cases, your opponents are going to be able to deal with that and still crack back and send 20, in which you're going to have to block. So maybe we just have not solved that area yet of Ranger, but I do think that this is quite a quite an interesting statistic that there were 0 assassin, mech, or pirates that made day 2, and that the only rangers that made it were 3 Lexi. There's also not a lot of illusionist in the day 2 either. I think only a few Enigma made it. No Prism, no Dromai, just Enigma. I think it was only a couple. So pretty poor conversion rates for Enigma there as well. I imagine just because having that additional their additional value on keeping a spectral shield alive is hard to do when your opponent has a bunch of abilities. I also think Decimator Great Axe probably plays pretty hard on that, just because Enigma's auras are weapons, and so if you Steel Blade Shunt one of those, it pings your opponent for 1 and can destroy the spectral shield. So it is kind of a pain in the butt for Enigma to be alive in this format, but who knows, right? But at the end of the day, we had our top 8. The top 8 were 3 Decimator Great Axe Warriors, 2 of them being Dorinthia, 1 of them being Olympia, 2 KO, the heavy hitters, Armed and Dangerous KO, 1 Oldham, 1 Briar, and 1 Bravo Flattering Showman. And that is pretty insane considering. Sure, there were technically 6 heroes represented, but Olympia and Dorinthia are effectively the same flavor of hero. It's just, do you want to capitalize on the go again of your effect once, or do you want to capitalize on having 1 more point of block value, or 2 more points of block value, I guess. So that's kind of the whole concept we have here with it, is that it's effectively the same deck. So whether you're like Olympia or Dorinthia, I don't think there's like a this is the best compared to this and so on and so forth, because at the end of the day, those games are won. If you meet each other in the mirror, right, the games are won by who stacked their shunts and got their opponent down to 2. Like, that pretty much does it for you. So I'm not sure how that's going to be navigated in the future, but Decimator Great Axe Warrior definitely did a lot this weekend, and we can see that here. We also then, of course, have the heavy hitters KO. No Reinar's made it into the top 8. I know Reinar was a pretty big pick for some of the min-max team and for Team Ascent stuff and all that jazz, and I think it was really, really cool. But it does not look like they are... it doesn't look like it really did the job. I think it was just a counter to hard fatigue. And because it was such a hard counter to fatigue, effectively it won into fatigue decks really well. But if it got played into a Briar, I would imagine it probably was pretty rough. And then, of course, Oldhim. Only one Oldhim making it in top 8 is interesting. I mean, there were like 46 Oldhim or something on the day, and not a lot of them made it into day 2. It takes a lot of patience for you to play Oldhim in those, and there was the Oldhim game that I watched at the beginning of their day 2 stream was against Decimator Dory, and that was just that was a masterclass in fatigue. If you want to see a game in which you want to study fatigue, that is it. That is the game you study. That game is so good, and it's such a great back and forth to showcase that, as well as the mirror that occurred later on in the top 8. Both the Olympia and one of the Dorinthias had made it into the semifinals and had played into each other. Another great aspect of showcasing the fatigue game and even the mirror, which you're probably going to be running into as well. But overall, at the end of the day, spoilers, if you do not want to take a look at if you don't want to find out who won the event, Paul Van Heysel, previous calling winner, had won the event on Briar. The only Briar to make it into top 8 and the only Briar to take it home for the calling. It came down to a pretty big variance hand, which was very that's Flesh and Blood. That's super cool. They had exact lethal on the stack. And if it wasn't until if Paul did not draw into an Arcane Seed's life, the game would have been over there. But he did. So that is what exactly kind of kept him alive and allowed him to continue to push for more. And I think that it was just a level of patience and understanding of a Decimator deck. It was funny during the interview, Paul had mentioned that he initially wanted to play Decimator Fang into this and decided against it last minute and ended up playing Briar, which was super cool. I mean, what a clutch thing to do. I think the deck turned out really well. Still presented a lot of that power, and I think overall it's just a super cool deck. So Briar obviously still being pretty relevant to the meta. But with all that being said, what does this mean for Silver Age, right? This was the door opening for Silver Age. It sounds like the amount of response people had to the format was insanely good. Nobody had a bad time. Paul Van Heysel even, had really expressed that the format feels like you're thinking more. It's more of every decision point matters because you're at 20 life. And so therefore you feel like your impact in the game feels better. And so that kind of concept really is enough to kind of push the envelope for what this format is meant to be, which is you take the first 20 life out of a classic constructed game and you play the same game in what is essentially is a living legend format without all the majestics and legendaries and all that stuff. And it provides for a very tight game. You still have to make very important decisions. You can't just mess around with that kind of stuff. And it ends up being just such an insanely good game to watch, even a good game to play. You feel good playing them. But what does it mean for Silver Age moving forward, right? We've seen a lot of success here. What are we looking at towards next, right? Well, Calling San Diego is next weekend. Calling San Diego being another Silver Age calling. And there's also going to be a showdown there as well. And that is going to be a pretty large event, I would guess, especially after taking a look at the outcome in London. I think it's going to be a pretty big event here in the States. If you're finding your way over to San Diego, I think you take a look at what the meta was in day 2 and make tweaks based around that information. My personal opinion, taking a look at this meta overall, pretty much, is that Decimator Warrior is going to be a thing you are going to be playing against at some point. Will it be the most popular deck? Probably not, but it is going to be present. So you do need to make sure you know how to play into that deck. If you know what your fatigue strategy is, and maybe it's just a just kill them kind of deck, and you're like, okay, cool, I'll take 4, no blocks, send 20. If you can do that a whole bunch, that'll certainly help. But you'll also be seeing Briars. You'll still be seeing Briars at your locals. You'll still be seeing Briar at San Diego. You'll see Guardians. You'll see Brutes. You'll see Wizards, right? We saw a lot of really good representation from Kano in the top spots there of day 2, which was, I think the deck is very real, and if the deck can blow you up, it can blow you up, but sometimes you get hit with a double Oasis, and it does not do the same thing. So it is, in fact, kind of a peculiar situation to be in, but overall, I do think that the deck, functions very well with a Wizard. So you're probably going to be playing into a lot of Decimator Warrior, Guardians that like to play more of that block slop level stuff of the 0 for 4, or not 0, just the block 4 cards. And then also your aggro decks such as KO and Briar and Aurora probably. And then your Wizards, right? And your Wizards being, you'll probably play some people who definitely still think Icelander is crazy good. I do think Icelander has some good play into Briar at least, but at the end of the day, I think that Kano just gets over the top for a lot of these Guardian decks, and Icelander does not. And so because of that, it's a lot harder for Icelander to push through that wall to get to facing the Briars and stuff like that there. But that's pretty much what I imagine the meta is going to look like moving forward here. We have Calling San Diego coming up. I know there's a few other events that are also happening over the course of these next few weekends, and I think we're just going to have to keep our eyes on them to see how they turn out. Do we see Briar win every event? We'll see. But any possible bans we might see will happen on March 2nd, which is after the ProQuest season. ProQuests are coming up pretty quickly here, so that will certainly be a great opportunity for people to get their invite to playing in the the Pro Tour at Las Vegas, which is going to be super sick. But there will be Sage ProQuest events, and those Sage ProQuest events are happening before the CC ProQuest events. So if you are expecting to get more information on bans for Silver Age, that will happen on March 2nd, which is after that Silver Age ProQuest like block. Do I think, out of the bans that I think I could possibly see, obviously we're not doing hero bans until the next set is due to come out. But what I do expect to see is possibly a Decimator Great Axe ban. Decimator Great Axe just, and not even for the reasons you would think, right? I'm personally, I would love to not see a Decimator Great Axe ban because I love that deck. But I think for the reason it would get banned isn't even because the deck is good. I think what it does is it is a very siloed way to play an entire class. There are other classes there are other heroes in that class that play a little bit differently and might not want to play Decimator Great Axe, but this is very much so you can play 3 out of the 6 warriors that are available in the format and just slap Decimator Great Axe and a bunch of overpowers in the deck and Felling Swings and Steelblade Shunts, and the deck is just it sings. It does exactly what it needs to do. There are other flavors of Decimator Great Axe, which are certainly fun to see, but I don't think that it is. I don't think it's going to be enough to really change the way that people will look at Decimator Great Axe. I think it just ends up being something in which it silos the creativity of these heroes. And because of that, I could expect to see it banned. But LSS, if you're listening to this, please don't ban it. I want to play it continuously so bad. I love the way the deck plays. And it's very much so a great way to get around the block slop stuff, because if you get rid of Decimator Great Axe, I think block slop becomes a bit more significant in the meta, which is not good. You're going to see a lot more Terras, a lot more Oldhams, a lot more just heroes who are running these 0 for 4. They don't cost anything. These block 4 cards. And it will then just become, okay, well, nobody's beating these decks besides Briar, who happened to stack a pretty sick hand. So then it's just Briar, and anything that can block 4 pretty comfortably ends up doing it, which is not good. It doesn't feel good. At least this adds a third contender into the field. But I've played into some decks that are actually pretty good into Decimator Great Axe, and it's decks that I'm going to be testing. I only have like 20 days to test a whole bunch of stuff for Silver Age, so I'm going to be doing some hardcore testing here on the channel to figure out what we're going to be seeing. As far as possible bans, though, outside of Decimator Great Axe, we're probably expected to see maybe I don't really even know. I don't know that anything needs to be banned in Briar. I don't think anything is like crazy oppressive. Maybe Burn Up Shock could be one thing. But I don't really expect that to be the case. So I think it's going to be a lot of like, we're going to run down the clock, see what happens. The meta's probably due to shift pretty significantly moving forward here. Just because you have other heroes that people are going to be testing and trying out into this meta. And that's just going to do a lot for how we're viewing the meta coming up towards ProQuest season. So, yeah, that's my thoughts overall on Silver Age after this now. I'm excited to make more videos talking about some new builds I'm trying out. I am going to be upgrading my Decimator Great Axe Olympia build and doing more videos on that, because I still think that's a very, obviously you're top 8ing an event with Decimator Great Axe. Like, I don't think there's there shouldn't be a reason why we're fighting as who's better, Dory or Olympia. I think the only difference is that one has hero text and the other doesn't, but one plays just like a slightly better helmet compared to Helm of Unity. But, here nor there, right? I think it really just comes down to player preference and what you like and what you want to do. And I think that's going to be really helpful in guiding the meta moving forward. But Decimator, some other new builds I'm trying out. I'm also going to be playing around with Briar a bit, seeing how Briar plays, and then just seeing how we play out, trying to figure out what I want to do. The best part is that if you want to build every one of the decks that was in the top 8, it'll cost you literally like I don't know, like $100, and you can get, because you can get a Decimator Warrior, you can get a KO, you can get an Oldham, a Briar, and a Bravo Flattering Showman. 5 decks, and you get them for $20 because the cards really aren't expensive. And next thing you know, you have a whole battle box of like some of the most competitive decks in Flesh and Blood for this format that you can play around with, and you can proceed to play at your locals. You can play it at your competitive events, your ProQuest, San Diego, whatever it need be. And I think it's going to be the way that you move forward with this. So that being said, a great turnout, great responses. We even have people locally, and you know who you are, who previously were dogging on Silver Age. It was not good. Nobody liked it. It's just explosive, stupid stuff, and it wasn't really anything good. And now they took a look at the calling, the games, the way that they played out, the way people won their games. They're very tight games in which it was came down to the wire and you had to either pitch stack properly, or maybe you pulled into a card that your opponent would not have expected to see in your hand. And the next thing you know, you're in top 8 of a calling. So this was truly a wonderful event. Shout out to everybody who had a time there in the calling. I know the showdown events are also going on too in London. We don't have the results for that just yet, I don't think, but I look forward to talking about those as well once we see. But it has just like been a blast to continue to cover Silver Age. And again, we're hoping to get a lot of stuff here. I'm hoping to do more gameplay videos of Silver Age, talking a little bit about those. And then, of course, going over and kind of trying to figure out what we want to play in a meta, right? I'm stuck between 3 choices currently at the moment, but I'm going to go ahead and do some very, very serious testing, because the fun part is the games aren't long. So doing some good testing with some friends and talking a little bit about what we want to do for Silver Age. I do think that will help everybody who wants to get better at the format, to help rise into the event and do well at their pro quests, do well at the callings or the showdowns that you're going to. And it's just going to be a great time. So thank you all for enjoying Silver Age. Thank you all for enjoying this video. And if you did actually enjoy this video, just go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't already. And I hope you all continue to have fun in the flesh and blood. And I will see all of you beautiful Ashwings in our next video.